This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. All right, so I did these expectation videos for the wide receivers, for the entire defense, and now it's time we talk about the expectations for arguably the most important player on the team, and that's the quarterback, and the quarterback of this team, DeShaun Watson. And similar to how I did my expectations video for the offense, and similar to how I did my expectation video for the defense, I have some numbers here. Some of them are going to have high-low ranges. So base range, this is what he's got to hit in order for this to make any semblance of sense. And then high is where I would think like the high end of his season goes. And so on and so forth. I'll walk you through it and explain it as I put up the graphic. So without further ado, let's just jump into it and talk about the expectations that I have for DeShaun Watson in 2023, and let me know what you think of him. We're going to start with, let's start with the passing numbers, right? Because I think that's going to be the most important numbers for a quarterback. Rushing numbers are important, of course, but DeShaun, he has a more balanced game. So with DeShaun, and you're going to look at these numbers, you're going to see the high end, I have him at 4,867 yards. If you watch the receiver video, that number is not a surprise. It's literally from my receiving kind of expectation video. 68% passing on 624 attempts, which would be a high for him. Not the percentage, but the attempts. 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions on 7.8 yards per attempt, and 45 sacks. His base numbers, and I honestly believe that he's going to be closer to the high than the base, but you still want to throw a base out there just so you can be like, hey, if people want to debate whether he met expectations, he did meet these expectations. So 4,267 yards, 65% passing on 601 attempts, 27 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 7.11 yards per attempt, and 45 sacks. I think that should probably be at 50. I think I forgot to put that in there, but like 45. He shouldn't be at like 50, 60 sacks this year, right? Like as much as I don't mind where he takes some of these sacks, he should also not take as many as he did in Houston, because here are some encouraging numbers for you, right? I know people have gotten used to telling you all the discouraging numbers for DeShaun Watson and why his last 6 games were the biggest disaster that ever happened in the sports. And people love to hit the doom and gloom machine about that. But here's some stats that got me encouraged for 2022. His pocket time was 2.9 seconds in his 6 games back in Cleveland. That was a 0.4 second improvement, which is a massive improvement. I mean, that takes you from going from like 28th in the NFL to number 1. So if you don't understand how much of a 0.4 improvement is in pocket time, that's on you, but that's a giant improvement. The Browns I think they've had quarterbacks get like 2.9% and 2.9 second pocket times here for a very long time. The offensive line, hey, look, as much as you want to complain about Jed Wills, as much as you want to complain about any of the offensive linemen, we got rich people problems. And I think that's something that Ace in the AFC North Talk crew helped me kind of sort out was, and by the way, make sure you subscribe to that podcast, check us out. But one of the things they helped me kind of get a grasp on is how fortunate the Cleveland Browns are at offensive line and how good that offensive line is. We can complain about Jed Wills all the live long day, but there are like 28 other teams that would love to have Jed Wills on their team. You know what I mean? So cut up all those footages, film of him, missing a block or two, but who cares, because he still plays at a high level. And the pocket time that our quarterbacks get relative to other quarterbacks in the NFL kind of demonstrate that. So the 2.9 pocket time, that's a massive improvement, right? Pressure percentage was down 0.8 from what it was in 2020. So he got pressured less and was able to stay in the pocket longer. Also, the bad throw percentage was down 1% from 2020. So he wasn't throwing more bad footballs in 2020. What happened was that the drop percentage jumped up to 4%, which kind of tells the tale of the story, right? New quarterback, wide receivers are adjusting to him. He's adjusting to new wide receivers. He's adjusting to the weather and how fast he throws football with all the other players. All those other factors were really why he struggled versus him not being able to play football. And you look at some of these numbers, it kind of shows you that. And that's why I'm like, okay, so if those last 6 games in 2020, the more I look at it, feel like a red herring than it does actual indicator of what he's going to do in the future, then I'm going to bet that he's going to look a lot closer to 2020. And I think he'll be better in some areas in 2020. So that's the passing numbers, the 4,867 yards. That includes a lot of people getting yards. Still, you don't have 2 people get over 1,000 yards if you have that many passing yards and even that many passing attempts. The 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions would be a career best. This would be close to or arguably a career year. This would put him in the top 6 to 7 quarterbacks in the NFL, and this would put the Browns passing offense in the top 6 to 7 in the NFL. If he hits that base, he will be a top 12 quarterback in almost every statistic, and that will be cool. This team will probably win 9 to 11 games, and they will get to the second round of the playoffs. But after that, I don't know, right? If he gets the high-end number or closer to that high-end number, the more comfortable I feel about this team's ability to get to the Super Bowl, this team's ability to advance, and DeShaun Watson's ability to maintain a top 5 quarterback form. So base level expectations, he's got to be top 12, right? Those are top 12 numbers, upper end quarterback starting numbers. High end, that's top 5. I think he could be in that conversation. From everything that I've seen so far, from looking into what he did and did not actually struggle with last year, and just really taking a deep dive into DeShaun Watson, what went wrong, what didn't, I feel much better about it. So those are the passing numbers. I think he'll be closer to high. I have some numbers at the bottom of this graphic too. So IAYPA, that's intended air yards per attempt. So what this measures is how many times, whenever he throws the football, whenever he tries to throw a pass out there, how many yards was that pass, whether it's completed or not, intended for? Right? So that's what we're trying to figure out. This is more of a measure of a change of offense than it is anything else. I want that number, and I want his yards per attempt number to go up significantly from that 6-game sample. I believe he was at 6.5 last year. I want him to be closer to 8, right? That intended air yards per passing attempt, it has to be. I don't care what the numbers are. Whether he hits the high or low, he has to hit these 3 numbers, or I think he has to at least hit one of these 3 numbers or these 3 expectations. This has to go up. That's more on Kevin Stefanski than it is on DeShaun Watson, because intended air yards per pass attempt is a function of the offense. Now, this could be a situation where he's getting deep passing attempts and he's Kirk Cousins in it, which means he's just throwing like the shortest route possible because he doesn't want to take a chance with the football. That will be very obvious on tape to see, but this needs to be at 7.8 and above. It cannot be lower than 7.8. Big time throw percentage, I want him to get back to 2020 form. That includes a 7.4% on that big time throw. Honestly, I'm fine if the number stays above 6 here. If it goes any lower than 6, I'm a little concerned. If it goes any higher than 6, I'm very happy. Turnover worthy plays, this number, it has to stay below 3. But 2.1 is where it was in 2020. I want him to be lower than that. So less interceptions, less turnover-worthy plays, more big-time throws, more touchdowns, less intercept. Basic stuff here with the passing. That's kind of what I expect out of him as a passer. Let's talk about my expectations of DeShaun Watson as a runner, because he does have that phase to his game. And one of the things I found interesting about DeShaun Watson's rushing stats this year was When you look at him on average, he was the exact same runner, right? And what that tells me again, and this is why the more and more I look into those last 6 games of 2022, the more and more it feels like a red herring, because nothing that indicates athletic decline showed itself in that 2022 6-game sample. Nothing that indicates some kind of physical decline or some kind of, basically nothing that indicated anything that couldn't be overcome by simply being comfortable, by simply getting more practice time and not coming off a 12 game or 11 game suspension in the middle of the year after a 700-day layoff. Again, like I think we undersold that. Like, I think we as media undersold that. And I think we continue to undersell it. Were those 6 games bad? But like retrospectively, he was coming off a 11-game suspension, which is one thing, but an 11-game suspension after a 700-day layoff. That's crazy. It would have been difficult for him to have a good year last year if he played week 1. But that's the past. Still being said, nothing indicated that he had any athletic slowdown. Like nothing. The rushing numbers were up to par with what he's done in the past. The eye test stuff, when you saw him athletically, he looks the same athlete. The arm, all this stuff was there. It was like, oh, he's learning a new offense, so he's a little late here. Oh, he's getting good with personnel, so they're dropping a little bit more balls than normal. Again, I can't find much in that 2022 tape that does not feel like a red herring in retrospect. And I think a lot of people are jumping at it because he made his own bed in that respect, right? Publicly, with his public perception. Like, people just don't like him. And since that's the case, they're ready to jump on anything negative with him, whether they evaluate it's a red herring or not. And I'm just with this DeShaun Watson stuff and the panicking about what he did in those 6 games. One, I think people are making more of a deal out of it than it ever was. I think he wasn't even that bad in those 6 games. And 2, a lot of stuff that people said was bad, I mean, easily explainable, feels like a red herring. I would not bet the house on him being bad this year. That would be my recommendation. But let's look at the rushing numbers. I think he's going to go for 500 yards, 88 attempts, 8 touchdowns, 5.6 yards per attempt. Now, I was debating whether I should do a high-low range for the rushing numbers, but I decided not to, because I did the high-low range for the passing numbers because, hey, there was a considerable amount of rust he was working off. There is a new offense. I thought there was enough variables, right? More wide receivers that he hasn't worked with before. There's still enough variables with DeShaun Watson in the passing game to where I think there needs to be a range in play, because I'm not sure about how all these variables are going to affect him, whether it be positive or negative. With the rushing numbers, there's not much new there. He was the same really good runner last year that he's been his whole career. He's building on top of something, right? So 500 yards, 88 attempts, 8 touchdowns, 5.6 yards per attempt. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was like 3rd, if not 2nd in the Browns rushing attempts this year. He'll probably be 3rd. I think somebody's going to get more than like 100 attempts as a backup. Maybe. I'm not 100% sure about that. But I think that's going to be where he lives. It'll be interesting. Some of this is going to be design run. I don't know how much scrambling he's going to be able to do with how good the offensive line is, but he might be able to scramble more because he has more time with that offensive line. It can go either way. It's not necessarily an indicator of anything else. One thing to note with the passing numbers, so on 624 attempts, I believe that's 40 attempts per game. On 601 attempts, I believe that's closer to 35 attempts per game from him. So he's going to be somewhere between 35 to 40 passing attempts, which again, if you're only throwing 35 to 40 times a game, you're probably still going to run the ball a lot. So I don't think the expectations video for Nick Chubb really needs to be made unless you guys think that it needs to be made, because I don't think the expectations have changed that much for Nick Chubb, because I think his numbers will be pretty much similar to what he's done his whole career. I see no reason for those things to drop any significant amount this year, but that's my expectations for DeShaun Watson. Do you think I'm too high? Do you think I'm too low? Let me know in the comment section down below. And also let me know what your expectations are going to be for DeShaun so I can read them in my commentary video later this week. You guys have a great day. Have a good night. And as always, relax. I don't know. I said as always, and I had nothing that I usually say there. Y'all have a good night.